What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Everything College Basketball Podcast, episode 219. I'm, of course, your host, Josh Burton, and joining me again today on this fine Sunday afternoon, pair of my teammates, Michael DeRosa, head coach Scott Parrott. Gentlemen, with 3 weeks from today, we will get our full Field of 68 revealed to us in the flesh. This will be Championship Sunday in the SEC and the Big Ten, and I think, the American, I think always plays on Sunday. We are that close to finding out the tournament field and doing tournament prediction shows. The season has been a blur. It has been phenomenal. We got a lot to talk about today, especially it looks like the field, we've thought this for a couple weeks now, but I think after recent events, it's two teams and then a gap to everybody else. But other than that, how are you guys doing on this fine Sunday afternoon?
I'm doing terrific. Still, Houston cold is finally starting to go away. I think this week we'll be able to get back on the golf course, so that's a good thing. And I watched, just a ton of basketball from all different leagues, including a Harvard Penn overtime thriller, yesterday. So many great games to talk about, great performances to talk about, and speculation, right? You mentioned, Josh, as to who's in this thing, who's hot now, who's falling now, and how it's going to possibly play out over the next couple weeks. Michael, how are you doing?
Yeah, doing well. Watched a lot of basketball. Watched some fights yesterday, so that was fun. Just laying back, watching some hoops. But we got the St. John's game on now. And for all the point I talk about a ton, and I'm still going to continue to, is like the fact that if they're not hitting shots and their opponent's hitting shots, that they're going to be pretty beatable in a tournament setting. At the same time, if they're hitting shots like they are today, 8-16 from three, good luck beating them. Just good
that
luck.
Could be a long run then. You're right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to type something out.
Leads at this game.
Yeah, St. John's currently, 50 seconds before halftime, they are at 48-32. Now, we talk a lot about St. John's defense. They put up 48, almost a half a century in a half on UConn. Man, Danny Hurley's team, we've talked about it dating back to Maui. Defensive issues, they rank really high up in the ranking towards the 100s in defensive efficiency. St. John's isn't an offensive juggernaut, and they've got a half a century almost and a half. It's going to be one of those things, I think, when we get 3 weeks from today and we see that bracket, and wherever UConn falls, whether they're 7, 8, 9, wherever they may be, it's going to be hard to pick them because on one hand, you look at them and be like, their recent history, can you bet against Dan Hurley? They've got talent to make a run. But at the same time, you see games like this and you're like, they could also go in the first round. Like, how the hell do we look at UConn and decipher what we think about them when we see that bracket 3 weeks?
Yeah, they've had some clunkers.
Yeah. I think it's a matchup thing for me. I don't think UConn deals with physicality well, really at all at this point in the season. I mean, even at this point in the season, but especially then, like Memphis, when Memphis beat them, they just kind of pushed them around a little bit, right? And Memphis can play that way. St. John's absolutely plays that way. But like, if you want to play pretty ball against UConn, even if you're a team that's like might be ahead of them in a Ken Pom and a net, whatever, if you want to play pretty ball against UConn, I think you're going to have a tough time.
What if St. John's and Houston played, what would be the over-under?
Oh my God. It would probably be 61.
Yeah, it'd be something like that. Yeah, like a 115.
Yeah, 115. I meant never mind. I misunderstood.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. It'd probably be like a 115. Yeah. I think the final score, especially again, and I keep talking about this, but we see it, tournament sites, new rims, usually they're tighter. It's not conducive, especially in early rounds there, of like shooting all the time. So you're talking about a potential, maybe a lot of missed shots defensively. That could be like a 58-54 game.
Could be an Elite Eight game.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it'll be interesting. I've got thoughts on that. We'll talk more about it. Offense, defense. And I think we've seen this year, as great as defenses are, the better offense usually wins. So we'll see how that plays out in the tournament. But let's get to some news. Now, it was conflicting reports because originally it came out as a done deal. Like, I think it was Adam Zagoria tweeted it. Jai Lucas, the Duke assistant, former Kentucky assistant for 1 year under Cal, is slated to take over the Miami job. Remember, Miami became open when Larinaga retired. I can't think of his name. Larinaga retired, but then it kind of got back down that nothing's been official yet. Duke will play at Miami. I think it's on Tuesday night, so there'll obviously be more talks taken. But it does sound like Jai Lucas will be the next head coach of the Miami Hurricanes. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on that.
Well, first of all, yeah, I thought Shire's press conference was interesting. He acted like he didn't know that news was even being dropped, or he did talk up Jai as a great coach. He didn't back away from that, but he seemed a little surprised that it was that he was asked that question. And usually, where there's smoke, there's fire in these situations. To me, I've heard nothing but great things about him. I don't know him that well. We've met a few times. Heard terrific things about him. Obviously, I have Cam Sheffield there at Duke. It's an easy reference for me to see what his thoughts are. But boy, your first job to take an ACC job like that it's a monster. But I think he's probably equipped that they're beating Kentucky, Duke, Texas. I think a little, right? I mean that he sees what that looks like. Could probably be successful there. I mean, it's an interesting hire, but I think he can do a good job.
Yeah, to me, the interesting thing, and we talked about this in text conversation, was how early it happened. Like just the fact that it looks like they have their guy in February. But yeah, as Coach explained when we were texting, it's like the portal. It's like that makes sense, right? Like you want to get ahead of it for the portal, but hiring here in conference and then why Lucas would take that job, then it hangs over you as you're with a Duke team that, really could make a run. But if we want to get into some greasy theory territory here, if he does end up taking the job, we'll get real greasy with it. The Boozer twins, their final two was Miami and Duke. And the guy who brought them to Duke might take the Miami job. Not saying it's going to happen, but greasy theory.
I like that because my next point was going to be, I think Miami is just looking for some infusion of young blood. And why not go to, yes, he's an assistant, no head coaching experience, but an elite recruiter. You talked about the Boozer twins. He was the lead on Cooper Flagg, amongst others, through his stops at Duke and Kentucky. They're probably thinking, if this comes to be finalized, let's bring in a young guy, give him a chance to kind of grow into being a head coach role. And we know he's going to recruit. We know he's going to bring in elite level talent. At the very least, we'll have a fun basketball brand, and hopefully he can figure it out, put a support staff around him that helps him develop quicker. I think they're taking a gamble on, man, this kid will come in and this guy will come in, bring elite talent, and then we'll see what happens. I don't think it's the worst gamble for Miami.
I know Shire won't be happy if he takes the Boozer twins. That'll end that happy. That'll end that friendship.
Yeah, and Miami doesn't have at least they didn't. They were one of the first programs really, I cannot think of the word I'm looking for. Really use NIL like that with the Life Wallet guy. I don't know if they still have that influx of cash coming in, but I don't think he'd be short for money at Miami basketball. So
no,
you could probably really get some talent there, especially with all connections.
Look, when Larinaga retired and we briefly talked about it, we all agreed that this could be a very intriguing job. You're in the ACC. What we've all heard is Miami has good NIL or should have the money. And the lure and kind of the bringing it to South Beach and kind of all the environment around there. Look, man, I think him or whoever ends up being there could recruit really well. And recruiting's half the battle. You just learn how to coach and get elite talent, you got a chance.
Yeah, it's no longer building a program at that level. It's win right now. It's get money, pay good players, and win.
You know what also could help Jai if he is the finalized coach at Miami? My ACC has been pretty weak the last couple of years, and it doesn't look like it's going to get turned around. If we're looking long term, Duke's going to be there. You would think eventually Carolina would get back, and Louisville looks to be back there to stay under Pat Kelsey. Outside of that, if you're a coach going to Miami, who do you look at and be like, man, we can't compete here? He could have Miami instantly in the top 4 if he brings in the right people, within next year. So it'd be interesting. We'll keep an eye, see if it's finalized, but looks like Jai Lucas is going to be taking over Miami for his first head coaching gig. And it's a feast or famine type of hire. But look, if he hits right with that talent, Miami could be back in the top 10 for a long time. Yep. A couple of things before we get to kind of reviewing this big weekend we had. I wanted to do some fun stuff, and only because I've seen discussion about these topics floating around this week on Twitter, especially after last night's event. So I figured I'd ask you guys would play a couple of games here. One, the big question, I've seen polls go out. I've seen people talk about it. Kind of alludes to what I said in my opening there. The question being presented now is, as good as Auburn and Duke have been all year long, would you at this current stage take Auburn Duke against the field. So take two teams versus a field full of 66 other teams. I want to ask you guys, is it Auburn Duke against the field, or do you take the field?
Boy, it's a good question. I think those two have certainly separated themselves as the two best teams. I'd be hard pressed to go against them. I would probably take those two.
Michael?
Yeah, this is a betting thing, so my answer is going to be very math based. So I apologize to anyone listening, but like this is just how I think about stuff like this. I believe I saw the line. I don't remember what book posted it, but it was like -180 for the field, +150 for Duke Auburn. Yeah. And those two, it's like just looking at the price now, Duke's priced at 4-1. That's about 20%. Auburn's a little better. So like 20. Yeah. So like +150 there makes sense. Like 40%. I would say that's about right. Like 40% chance those two win at 60% at Houston. Like Houston is right there in KenPom. Like if we're looking at KenPom, it's Duke with a rating of 38.1, Auburn 35.9, then Houston 35.1, Florida 34.1, Tennessee 31.5. Plus with the fact that just looking at regions and stuff, Auburn's an SEC team, so they're probably not going to get an SEC team as their 2 seed, but like Duke probably will. So they might have to play at Tennessee in round 2 just because of how the bracket's going to scale out. That they could have a really tough region since the SEC has 6 of the best 8 resumes. They're going to have to go against an SEC team. That might have to be where you put Tennessee as a result. So
or Florida.
Yeah, I'll take the field. Yeah. So just because of that, I'd take the field.
Look, so Michael went mathematical, which I really appreciate. I always, anytime I'm posed with this question, and it's like every year, every couple years, you get a scenario like this. Oh, would you take Kansas from a couple years ago with how good they were against the field, or last year UConn, Purdue, or what? And obviously those two end up being national titles, so you'd have been right. But I think more times than not, and I've always said this, the best team in this crazy random tournament where you have to win 6 games does not always win. You can go back into history and look at how many times the best team at the end of the regular season heading into the tournament gets beat before they even get to the Final Four or the national championship game. So my answer is always the field, because there's too many variables, to Michael's point there with the mathematic part of it, that can happen. Where in Auburn, we saw it last year, win the SEC tournament. They have a really good team all year long. They finished tied for second in SEC, and they get bounced in round 1 by Yale. Now, I know this team's better than last year's, but it's still plausible that you have a bad shooting night, you get bounced. Duke, neutral site floors. I know we'll talk about they had a big one last night, but they've lost some 2 of them. Kentucky and Kansas on neutral floors because of late turnovers. Who's to say they don't play at Florida and turn the ball over and get beat? So I always take the field, just because the best teams do not always get to the Final Four, let alone win a national championship. So I'll take the field, but if there's 2 that could do it this year, it's probably Auburn and Duke. They've been that good.
The best thing going for Auburn is it lost to Yale right now last year.
Yeah.
In terms
I'd
of
agree
that.
with that, yeah.
And 2, the Duke are like, I'm going to argue for my case because you two both picked the field, which I understand why. But Duke's did lose those games. They did lose them early. They are a young team. They've matured through a lot and gotten better and better and better. And you saw what they did at Illinois last night. It was 2 different level teams playing in that court, and Illinois is pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I very clearly want it to come off. Like I don't think it's impossible that one of those 2 teams win. Frankly, I think they're correctly viewed as the favorites. Like they should be where they are. But
I totally understand why anybody would take the field.
Yep.
I just think one of those 2 is going to win it. I mean,
look, there's a good likelihood. Like we're going to talk more about what Duke did here in a little bit, but a couple other things I want to, just for fun here. So I got a couple questions here. The top team, now again, we don't know a bracket, still 3 weeks away, so we're kind of projecting, but we know who kind of the top 3-4 seed lines are projecting to be. So of those top level teams, right, which team in that top echelon is most likely to be upset in the first weekend, either in the round of 64 or round of 32, to not even see the Sweet 16? And to help you guys out, if you're trying to think of one, I'll give you mine. I think there's a couple candidates, but I'll go back to Tennessee. They're going to project to be a 2 or 3. Yeah. Go ahead, Coach.
No, I'm with. They went right to my mind.
Yep. They're going to project to be a 2, probably 3 at the worst. Maybe still have an outside shot at that 1 seed. but they're going to be a highly ranked seed, 22-5, really good team. But how inconsistent that offense is, I could easily see them playing. Like, I know Akron got beat yesterday, snapped their long winning streak, but I could see them playing Akron in the round or first round or even second round or however, and getting bounced because Akron gets hot. Tennessee can't keep pace, even with that elite defense, and Tennessee doesn't see the Sweet 16. To me, of the top teams, they feel the most vulnerable to me to be an upset early.
I gotta see. I don't have them in front of me, so I don't know what I'm referencing here. I mean, I'm assuming Marquette has fallen out of grace.
Yeah.
Okay. Tennessee is probably just because of the inconsistencies of the offense. But boy, I mean, we're just we're grasping at straws here a little bit. They're really good.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And Lanier went berserk yesterday, and Ziegler hit the big shot, and so I would lean with you, Josh, on that. I mean, I could see it possibly happening of that group. I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael?
I threw the bracket matrix in the private chat, Coach. If you want to look at that, it'll have like the seed lines of like what all the dorks are putting them and just
but
like
time
everybody.
out. I'm afraid of what'll happen if I click on it. I lose my screen. I won't know what'll happen.
That's fair.
No.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I'll just actually, better yet, I'll just share my screen. I should have thought of that in the first place. So we have here one seeds, Auburn, Duke, Florida, 2 here. For me, Josh, are we going down to the 3 line? Because I see a couple of threes. I might actually
go ahead. Yeah. Yep.
First one that comes to mind for me is Purdue. Just looking at, I mean, they're projected to be one of the top 3 seeds. They're in that line. I just think they're really matchup dependent. If you don't have if you have a guard that can stop a TKR, or you have, stop a Braden Smith, just contain him a little bit, pressure him a little bit. He kind of struggles with that. He averages quite a few turnovers for all his strengths, of which there are so many. He turns the ball over quite a bit. That's one that came to mind. And the other, especially like just looking down here at some like teams here, George Mason. I mean, if they get George Mason in the first round, I would actually pick George Mason. Granted, that'd be 3-12, so that's not going to happen. But like just the way George Mason plays defense, I think George Mason would beat Purdue on a neutral.
Go back up there. Now that I see him, this is a little easier for me. I got a couple. And look, I think Arizona's susceptible. I mean,
yep.
I would put them maybe ahead of Tennessee as somebody I think could get beat early. And I don't know what Kentucky's injuries are. I mean, they as well could get bounced by a really good team.
I'm surprised somebody didn't say them.
That was going to be the next answer. I was going Purdue and Kentucky.
Yeah, look, so I'm going to say Kentucky, Arizona, and look, I think A&M too.
Yep, inconsistency. We saw it yesterday. We'll talk about the game, and I think Iowa State. I know that sounds crazy. I think I could see a scenario where Iowa State in the second round, they'll probably be a 2. According to this, they're a 3, so they'll play a 6. You look at that 6 line, like Mississippi could get them. I know how weird Kansas has been, but if Kansas plays their potential, could get them. UCLA, Clemson. So I think Iowa State's a really good team, but I think Iowa State can be on that list as well. The other question, we got 2 more and we'll make them quick. Who, just in your opinion, as 3 weeks out, this year's shocker, surprise? So basically, and I have parentheses, a bubble team who can go on an NCAA tournament run. Again, to help you guys out, I think it's Vanderbilt. Ooh. I think it's Vanderbilt. The way they play offense, 5 out, spread out. We talk all about these high offensive teams. They can really get after teams. I think Vanderbilt is a matchup nightmare for a lot of teams, especially if they're shooting the ball from 3. And if you overplay the 3, they're back cutting you. I could easily see Vanderbilt getting in as like a 10 seed, knocking off their 7, beating a 2 seed, and all of a sudden you look up and Vandy's in the Sweet 16 and going on a run. That would be my pick.
I love it. And I think that's a good one. I'm going to say BYU.
Yep. Oh, good pick.
Look, because they're playing really well right now, and that matters.
Yep.
Now, if they get bounced the first round of the tournament, okay, but I think they're dangerous.
Yeah, and they have NBA talent too. Like they have they're not going to some of these teams are going to be at a pretty big talent disadvantage. If BYU lines up on the other side of say Illinois, I don't think that's a big talent disadvantage whatsoever.
Me neither.
Win that game, then they play at Texas A&M. Same thing. I don't think that's a huge talent disadvantage where there definitely be like Texas A&M can move people. They can kill you on the glass, but Demon, Catchings, if he's playing a good game, Richie Saunders is a really good player. Yeah, I could see it. Just looking up and down the bubble. I don't trust Arkansas enough.
That was going to be my other one, honestly. The way they're playing, I thought Arkansas could go on a run.
I see it. I like your guys' 2 picks. Those would be 2 teams I'd look at. I said them for the last answer. I referenced them. They're not a bubble team at this point. They'd be an at-large. I mean, they'd have to win their conference tournament in all likelihood. But George Mason, just the way they play to me, teams that slow the game down, limit possessions, play defense, and they can hit shots. Like George Mason's defense, I believe in Ken Palm. I'm going to pull that up now, but I think they're like top 10. They're going to slow the game down. It's going to be a low. They are fifth. They're 14th in defense.
Wow.
They're 14th. They're going to slow a game down. They're going to make you play their style. If they're hitting shots, that adds just a little bit of variance to it. But you're going to have to play a low-scoring game against George Mason. If you're going to beat George Mason, you have to beat George Mason the way they want to play. Teams that can impose a style on you in March, to me, those are the teams I like picking to make upsets.
They are the poor man St. Mary's, is what they are.
Yeah.
The way they can slow it down.
Is that a 2-bid league? Are they both going to get in?
It depends, right? I think VCU is going to win that league, and then it'd be up to George Mason getting an at-large, and I don't know. I don't know if they would. Currently, they're in, but that's also not counting other people taking bids and knocking them out. And the last one I want to ask is about the low mid-major teams, and I said no Mountain West because they are not a mid-major anymore the way they're playing. That with the disappearance of Pac-12, you might as well count Mountain West as kind of like that other high major. So no Mountain West in this. What lower mid-major team is most likely to go on a run? And I'll go back to the team I have shouted since the magazine, and that is Purdue Fort Wayne. Anytime you have a trio of guards in Jalen Jackson, Rasheed Bello, and even Quentin Morton Robertson, these dudes can play. And yeah, they're a little undersized for teams that they'll play at the high major level, but the way they play and can really spread you out. They don't turn the ball over. They're effective as hell when they do score. They shoot the 3 ball incredibly well. They're 24th in the country at that. If they can get out of the Horizon League tournament and be the 1-bid representative from there, I think they're going to be a matchup nightmare for a lot of these high majors. If there's one team to do it, I think Purdue Fort Wayne could go on a run and really surprise some people.
I'm going to say keep McNeese State is dangerous.
Yep.
Yeah, I think they're talented, and they could beat, they could win 2 games, in my opinion. So UC San Diego, UC Irvine, whoever wins that, also, those are 2 damn good teams.
Yep, I like that.
UC San Diego is like I believe they're in the top 40 in the net. They're 35th in Ken Palm. Like that team is legitimately good. They're probably better than some teams that might get at large spots.
I know coaches in that league very well. They all just rave about how good they are.
Yeah, that team they are really, really good. Like you remember that year that Middle Tennessee made the tournament as a 12 and they played Minnesota in the first round and they closed like a favorite? I feel like UC San Diego could be in like a very similar spot. Yeah. But I want to go dog hunting here because those are fun. Lipscomb, the way they play, really good offensively. They're a team that'll shoot a ton of threes. If they're hitting that day, someone could have a bad time. And they're not even on this graphic. I'm scrolling down here. Yeah, okay. South Alabama is here. The Sun Belt team, I don't even know if they're the best team in that tournament. And I think that tournament's going to be a ton of fun. But just the way they play is so weird. They take a ton of threes. They're not a great 3-point shooting team. And they run this zone. It's this 2-3 matchup weird zone where they just completely pack it in. Teams are taking almost 60% of their shots against South Alabama from the 3-point line. It's just going to be a 3-point shooting contest.
What do they shoot? Do you have their percentage, what the teams are shooting against them?
Yeah, let me pull up Ken Palm here. Give me a second.
I'm just curious. If they're giving up that percentage amount of shots, is it 32%? Is it 34%?
Yeah, so let me pull this up here. Let me share my screen.
Here, I got you.
It is really
32.9% is what teams are shooting from 3.
So 33% are giving up and 60. Wow.
Yeah. It's just watching them play. It's such a weird style. They're like, they give up the highest percent opponent. They just force teams to shoot threes against them, and they're also going to shoot threes. That it's really weird. They're another team. You have to play their style. And they're a team that if they lose in the tournament, I think they're going to get blown out, just completely blown out. Like they'll lose by 20, 25, 30. But if they win a game, it's going to be competitive. It's going to be late. Comes down to shot making late. They can win a game. And Chattanooga is the last team I've watched a little bit. They impressed me. Want to watch them a little more before I give like a confirmed take, but they've experienced guards. And that's another thing I look for.
So the guy that just chimed in there is a friend of mine. There he is. Yep. He actually coached some Division III basketball. He's a very good basketball player. Huge fan. He's saying they're very, very good. There's a good. That's just not a random fan texting. He knows the game.
Well, we appreciate Mark for chiming in and watching along today. As always, we are live on the YouTube, the Twitter, and the Facebook. If you're following along live with us, leave us a like, follow us, and get your comments. And we love to get to the comments, questions, and all that.
Random stats for you. Mark Copeland was the assistant coach on Mike Rhodes' national championship team at Lebanon Valley. How's that?
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
that's a really cool connection there.
Yeah.
So really fun stuff. Obviously, when we get the bracket revealed 3 weeks from today and we do our big tournament show, we will revisit some of these once we see matchups and who's officially in the tournament. Just something fun to kind of do to start the show today. But let's get into some of the action over the weekend, and it'll stick with the theme of today. Duke just absolutely throttled Illinois. Now, we know Illinois has a lot of talent, but they have really struggled. I thought when we previewed this game on Thursday that Illinois would show some fight. I thought that they would feel like their backs against the wall, and this is their chance in the Garden, the world's most famous arena, national spotlight, that they would come out and remind people how good they are. Now, I did pick Duke to win, but I thought Illinois would make a good accounting for themselves. Duke put the kibosh on that right away. Duke 110, Illinois 67, and they've been so dominant here basically since the end of November. They did have the loss a couple weeks ago to Clemson. It was on the road in a close environment. But since the loss to Kansas on November 26th, this team has absolutely steamrolled other teams to the point we have to beg the question, is Duke the number one team in the country? And do you favor Duke going to San Antonio? Like, they put an ass whooping on Illinois yesterday.
So here's my fight analogy from that game. I'm going to go way back before Michael was probably born. This was like Mike Tyson versus Michael Spinks. This is like over in the first 90 seconds of the first round, because Duke just was that dominant. They were so good, so locked in. And, Madison Square Garden, you could tell they were hyped. Cooper was excited to play there, and that's what it looks like clicking on all cylinders. Michael, they're obviously, that's why the question was posed: can Auburn or Duke versus the field? And they're that good.
Yeah, they are 100% that good, and the fact that they've taken a decent lead just in like the Ken Palm efficiency, like just the way he does net rating. They're 38, Auburn's 36. Like the fact they're just killing some of these teams. I still wouldn't say they're the best team in the country just because Auburn has beaten so many good teams that they are proven. Yeah, that would be the reason. But they're very clearly number two for me. They're awesome. Cooper Flagg is he's just a star. And the way they defend, they can switch so many actions. That was kind of one point I talked about. The way Illinois is beating teams is that it's Kaspar Stekachonis in those ball screens, and they just kind of use him because he's so much bigger. He can see over the defense, make reads, hit tough shots, whatever. Duke had the size to guard him. And that was what it looked like to me in this game. They just completely shut him down. And I think this also says a little bit about Illinois. Since I have my date, since the 19th of January, Illinois is the 46th best team in the country per Torvik, and that would have them 4-7 in their last 11 games. I think teams are just kind of finding an answer to this Illinois team that maybe once we get the tournament, they'll be able to play teams outside of their league and who don't have the length that a Duke has. But I think teams are just starting to find answers on how to guard Illinois. They've run the same style the entire year, and eventually someone's going to find an answer to it. And I think once those games are on tape, they're going to get you. And that was just kind of what I thought in this game. And granted, Duke, they made it look like easy, Coach, really easy.
And they have Iowa at home and at Michigan and Purdue left. I mean, it's no easy road for Illinois either here.
No, and I mean the way we've talked about Purdue, they don't have let me see if I don't think they played Purdue this year. Yeah, so that's going to be really interesting.
Last game of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, it doesn't look like they've played any. They played Iowa. No, I just looking through it. I don't think they've played any of these teams. So that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, lost their last three. Granted, their last three is against Michigan State, Wisconsin, Duke. So I don't know. You can get a pass for those three, right? Those are three really, really good teams, but. Yeah, I don't know. I want to watch Illinois a little closer, see if it's just teams finding an answer for them or if they can start to impose their will. And I think Iowa's a really good matchup for them to kind of get it going. Josh, you muted.
Sorry. Full disclosure, I'm babysitting, so I'll step away every so often. So I appreciate you guys helping me out here. The thing on Illinois, 17-11 now, 9-8 in the league. You guys remember, wasn't that long ago, a month ago, we were talking about Illinois potential 1 seed, how good that they were playing. They've like the wheels have fallen off, and it's not often that you see a team that's this talented and the wheels fall off this close to March that all of a sudden they magically get the wheels back on the bus and figure it out. To me, Illinois has upset early rounds written all over them. And yes, Duke is really good. And yes, Illinois has played some really good teams. But go back to last week, the Michigan State game. At home, they don't score for 8 minutes at home. Forget the Duke score getting beat by 43. If you can't score in your home building for 8 minutes from the floor, guys, you're not winning many games in the NCAA tournament. I'm completely off the Illinois bandwagon. I don't trust them. To what Michael and you guys were saying about Yakatronis, the way they get in those ball screens, teams have kind of really defended that and figured that out. If they can't get into that ball screen action and going downhill, like Kylan Boswell gave them 12 yesterday, but 4 of them came from the free throw line. When Illinois was really good back in November, December, he had big roles. He had 20-point games. He was defending. They're not getting much out of him. They're not getting much out of – I mean, they got nothing out of Ben Humerkaus yesterday. Will Riley, ever since he got subbed to the bench, not really giving him much. I'm completely off the Illinois bandwagon. And then for Duke, look, I mean, it's impressive. And the most impressive thing I heard people talk about that were there live in person in the Garden yesterday, they were beating Illinois' head in and never really once let them know about it. Very workmanlike. And I heard this morning, and I'm wanting to give credit. I think it was the Field of 68 guys. One of them said it, that it reminded what Duke did and what they've been doing reminds them of the Jay Wright national title teams, where it's very workmanlike, that they'll come in, they'll beat your head in, they'll have fun doing it, but they're not really going to talk a lot of mess. Yeah. It kind of does seem like that. Like this team is just beating the hell out of teams and doing it like they're supposed to. It's crazy how good they are.
They're talented, and they got arguably the best talent, most talented kid in the country on their team who's all about the right things too. And going back to the Illinois situation, another team I'm going to put in that bucket is Marquette.
Yeah.
They've lost 4 of 6 and only 2 wins are DePaul and Seton Hall at home. And by the way, at the end of January, we were talking about them being a 1 or 2 or whatever, a 2 seed. Yep. And so it changes in the end of the season and how you're playing and when. That's why I mentioned BYU, and it's just so interesting how these teams and how much we've talked about St. John's just keep getting better and better and better and better, and other teams fall off, and we're seeing that. It just happens.
You know what the most scary thing about Duke last night was? 7 guys in double figures. Malik Brown did not play. They played literally their entire roster. They played 14 dudes, got at least a minute on the floor. And Mason Gillis, who's been phenomenal down the stretch for him, 19 minutes, only 3 points. They could just beat you from so many ways. Like Sion James, experienced defending. They've got an elite rim protector in Kama Malawach back there. And you've got absolute studs in Cooper Flagg and Con Knipple. It'll be an uphill climb to try to knock this team off in March. And you also got to think, too, they're going to be a 1 seed, maybe the overall number 1, depending on how things go. And they're going to get to play right in their backyard. They're going to be put in Raleigh for the first 2 rounds. Then they're going to go up to East Rutherford, which is Duke territory, for the Sweet 16 Elite 8 before they make the trek to San Antonio. They're going to be playing in front of home crowds throughout the first 4 games of the NCAA tournament. It's going to take a real effort to beat Duke. And look, Auburn was clear-cut number 1, has been for a long time. I think Duke has completely closed that gap to where it's pretty neck and neck now. And Duke's got the head-to-head win against them back in December. So impressive by Duke. Illinois, sell now, because I can't see a way where they make a comeback here and get this thing righted before the tournament. Completely out on Illinois, completely sold on Duke. Let's go to a top 10 matchup that happened again.
Team, Josh.
Go ahead.
Duke is so young. 28 assists to 6 turnovers. Whereas you mentioned those are Jay Wright like Villanova numbers.
It was a clinic.
Yep. Yeah.
Let's go to the top 10 matchup I just talked about that happened in College Station yesterday. Number 6 Tennessee went on the road to number 7 Texas A&M and left with a dub, 77-69. I know we just kind of shat all over Tennessee about being a contender for being out in the first round, kind of upset. But you got to give them credit. This is still a really, really, really tough team. They went down to a tough environment in a big-time showdown for not only top 10 AP and ECB rankings, but obviously an SEC ranking list. And they held A&M 69 points. They got a big performance from Chaz Lanier, 30 points. Zakai Ziegler chipped in 16. Hit probably the most clutch shot of the game. Tennessee was only up, I think it was 2 points. They were trying to run the clock out. It was real late in the game because I was watching this. They called a timeout because Barnes didn't like the setup they had.
He got caught on the baseline. He over-dribbled. Ziegler over-dribbled, got caught underneath the basket.
That's what it was, and forced to burn a timeout. They only had, 2.5 seconds left on the shot clock. They get it into Ziegler. He buries a wing corner three there right around the bench from Tennessee. Ices the game, essentially. And Tennessee holds on, pulls away his free throws late for an 8-point victory. Lanier, Ziegler are obviously the catalyst of this team. Jordan Gainey, when he's playing good, he gave him 14 points in 32 minutes off the bench. But we've talked about it all year long. If they get good Chaz Lanier, 30 points effort, 20, 25, just get him scoring the ball, Tennessee is much, much harder to beat. If he does not shoot the ball well, that's where we have concerns about, like, this team could get knocked off early. But when they're playing like this, and then you get Ziegler doing what Ziegler does, the 16.7 assists, and then get other production from whether it be a Milicic or Jordan Gainey or Felix Akpar or whoever, that's when Tennessee is really good. I thought this was an impressive win, Coach.
Fun game. I watched almost the whole thing, and Lanier went berserk in the first half. I mean, when a kid's like that, it's, so it's fun to watch. He just was feeling it. He also hit a big one late from the top in the second half. But the game, it finished 8 points. It wasn't an 8-point game. It was a battle all the way down to Ziegler's shot, which finally separated. Then A&M took a bad one, rebound, fouls, whatever. But just a great game. Two really good defensive teams, two really well-coached teams. And, Tennessee got a hard-fought road win because the kid hit a huge shot. A veteran guard hit a huge shot late when it mattered.
Coach, I want to ask you something real, schematically that they were talking about, a little confused on the broadcast. A&M was only down 3 at the point, and there was still 45 seconds left to go, and Buzz designed a 3-point look instead of attacking the rim, and the announcers were confused by that. They're like, well, we would have got downhill. Who was on the call? Fran Fischel was like, I don't know, man, I would have got downhill. But they say Buzz does this. He's like, analytically, it's better to try the 3 early, and then you'll foul and attack the rim, whatever. How did you, what did you see, or maybe what that Buzz was thinking there? Because it did seem a little quick going for the 3, but I kind of want to hear your thoughts on that.
It's a really good point and a good question to talk about. The way we looked at it in those situations was this. If one of our best shooters got a clean look, shoot it. Yeah. In other words, and I may run a play for him to see if he gets the clean look. And if it's not there, he knows, then, okay, let's go to the rim and get the 2.
I forget if it was Taylor or Phelps tucked the shot.
It was Taylor. He came off the stagger. Came off the stagger up top and missed it. But if we got Quincy or Travis, an open look, they're allowed to take it no matter what the situation of the game was. So I wouldn't change it then. Now, if the look wasn't there, then it's get to the rim, and we wanted to extend the game as much as we could at that point.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. That's really interesting. And the point I was going to make, actually, just to me, this game kind of comes down to it. Chaz Lanier had a crazy game. Veteran guards made plays late, as you guys mentioned. But if we look at 3 guys on Texas A&M, Zurich Phelps, Wade Taylor, Solomon Washington, they combined for 1 of 20 from 3. You're not going to win many games.
Was it 5 for 30 for the game?
5 for 30.
Yeah, 5 for 30, yeah. Wade Taylor was 0 of 9. Zurich Phelps was 1 of 7 from 3.
How was it even that close? I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah. It is crazy that they were able to keep the game so close, and it's because they're such a good offensive rebounding team.
Yeah.
Some of their best offense even comes from misses.
You're right.
Yeah, but the fact that those guys weren't hitting and they still played a competitive game, it says a lot about A&M too. And credit Tennessee. Like when Lanier's going off, they're live to beat literally anybody. And you have a veteran guard in Zakai Ziegler, and he was clearly annoying Wade Taylor in this game, and that's a full credit to how good he is defensively.
And how about Pharrell Payne messing up a Wade Taylor 3-point opportunity? Taylor drives hard to the left side of the rim, gets a foul, gets it up off the glass. It's going in. And For whatever reason, Pharrell Payne decides to go up and try to tip the ball in, and it gets waved off. Killed them on a 3-point play opportunity. I want to say this about A&M. You look at the stat line you guys mentioned. CJ Wilcher, 14 minutes, 3 points, 1 of 4 from 3-point line. Jace Carter, 10 minutes, 3 points, 1 of 3 from the 3-point line. You're talking about two dudes for A&M coming into this year, and they've had good moments that were expected to be big-time producers, whether they got shuffled in the starting lineup or they came off the bench. Those two combined for 6 points, 2 of 7 from the 3-point line. That's not going to get it done. They need Manny Obaseki fully, I think, healthy. He only played 3 minutes in this game. They need him fully back to be at their peak, because if he plays, that gives them that third option. But A&M's just another one of these teams that are tough as hell, offensive rebound elite, and will beat you with the toughness. They're so hot and cold with their offense. If they're on with Taylor and Phelps going nuts, then they've got a chance to beat anybody behind that toughness and defense. If those two don't play well, they're very susceptible to an upset. So great win for Tennessee. But again, Tennessee, these two are almost mirror images of each other, yep. Tennessee and A&M. They need Chaz Lanier to play well, and he's so up and down. He gave 30 last night in a big-time road win. They may come back for if they play next, and he may only have 12 and they get beat. That's just kind of the life with Tennessee right now. But great win, big-time performance, keeps them hanging around, hovering for an outside shot at a 1 seed, and keeps them, more importantly right now, in the mix to try to get a top 4 double bye in the SEC tournament. Let's go to the Big Ten, where a minor upset happened just based upon rankings and it being on the home floor there in the Kohl Center. Wisconsin blew a 15-point lead over Oregon at home. Oregon ties the game on a Jackson Shellstead. What was it, Michael? Like 35 feet 3-point shot?
It was like this. It was like 30 feet. He's so good. That was crazy.
Buries it to tie the game, drags Wisconsin into overtime, and pulls away in overtime for a 77-73 overtime victory in the Kohl Center. Coach, Wisconsin was up 17. I seen 15. At one point in the first half, they were up 38-21. So they're up 17 points and blew it at home to an Oregon team who has been up and down this year. Not a great way to lose a game like that.
No, I stopped paying attention, and then Michael's text came across to the group, and I was like, "Wait, what happened?" I couldn't believe it. And that's the same kid who hit the shot that didn't count at Iowa, right, on his fingers,
yep,
by like a millimeter.
Yep.
But anyway, yeah, that's a crazy comeback to Oregon. A big kid, Brittle, right?
Yeah,
big kid for Oregon, played really well. Hit a big bucket in overtime late. I saw the replay. That's a unbelievable comeback win against a hot and good Wisconsin team. I was shocked.
Yeah. The thing in the game that did it for me, Shellstead hit that crazy shot. And I love Jackson Shellstead, pride of Westland, Oregon. He's so much fun to watch. When he's on, he's ready to take over a game. But Wisconsin is not a team that struggles with turnovers generally. Like, they have one of the lower turnover rates in the country. Like, they don't turn the ball over a ton. They could not beat Oregon's press. And I don't know if you guys were watching the game late. There was a play where inbounded the ball, and I think it was Bamba. I think Bamba hit the ball, and it clearly hit the ball. It hit off Bamba's leg. But then, I don't know if it was Tanji Blackwell. Someone went to grab the ball, and they very clearly hit it and then knocked it out. But the refs didn't see, it wasn't a confirmed angle or whatever. So they inbound the ball again. Wisconsin got it back. They got lucky. And the next play, they turn it over again on the inbound. So they had 17 turnovers in this game. I think it was Oregon had 7 steals in the second half. They could not beat Oregon's pressure. They couldn't beat it. For whatever reason, they could not get the ball up the floor. And that's really what it came down to. Oregon came back in this game because they were forcing turnovers, getting out and running, or finding guys in transition to get easy buckets, creating mismatches, whatever. That was the difference in this game to me. And that's something you got to watch. Stephen Corral in this game was very good, but he had 6 turnovers. John Blackwell, 3 turnovers. Max Klesmit, 2 turnovers, no assists. They just couldn't stop turning the ball over. That was the difference to me.
So speaking of turnovers, and Notre Dame's women are playing NC State. It's going down to the wire in the last minute. Hidalgo just had a terrible turnover. Notre Dame down 1 with 40 seconds left. NC State ball, timeout. Chance to go up 3.
Look, number one may fall in the women's game right now. Turnovers.
Turnovers.
On the Oregon point here too, they're 9-8 now in the league. They're tied with Illinois. I don't know if they can get up to that top 4 for the double bye. They've given themselves an opportunity, but I think time's going to run out on that. But Wisconsin now with the loss, tied with Purdue and Maryland. Wisconsin now is in danger of falling to 5th potentially, and UCLA still only a game behind them. So you're talking about a cluster in the Big Ten right now. You've got Michigan State 13-3, Michigan 12-3. Then behind them, Wisconsin, Purdue, Maryland 11-5, UCLA 10-6. That whole top 6 of the league right now is kind of jumbled up, jockeying for position in that Big Ten tournament. It's going to be a hell of a finish down the end here to see who ends up, how this plays out down the stretch.
Is there a good team we've talked about less than Maryland?
No, and they're really good.
I love this Maryland team.
They're really good.
Yeah.
Tell me why Kevin Willard shouldn't be in the mix for National Coach of the Year.
Why has nobody ever say a word about this team? It's like the quietest 21-6, 11-5 I've ever seen.
Look, we've talked about him some, and to Michael's credit, he has been on air some, but off air is particularly like loving this team. And he's the one that got me to open my eyes to him earlier back in the year when I think they beat Villanova by 1. They beat Ohio State, and he was like, hey, keep an eye on this team. Like Derek Queen, phenomenal freshman. Jacoby Gillespie coming in from Villanova. Julian Reese has been really good. Rodney Rice. Like, that's a really good – Selton Miguel. Like, that's a really good team. Hey, you want to talk about –
Florida, I coached against him.
Yeah, like you want to talk about a team that's not getting the love that maybe they should, that all of a sudden you look up with the matchups and the way they play that could be in San Antonio. Maryland, I think, fits that billing. And –
like, because Cooper gets so much attention and they have a freshman, it's as good. I mean, other than maybe Cooper or, the kid's amazing.
Kevin Willard said something in a interview he did recently, which I don't know if I fully agree with it. It's definitely a coach talking his guy up, and it's like, okay. But they said if Derek Queen was white from Europe, he'd be the first overall pick. That's what he said. It's like,
and then they asked Queen I think they asked the kid that then.
Like, I see it. He's so skilled. But the difference for me last year, I liked this Maryland team a lot last year too, and I got burnt full disclosure. But like watching them this year, Jacoby Gillespie is amazing. He is awesome. The Belmont transfer. He entered the portal, and Maryland was on him like white on rice. They wanted him badly. They went all out to get him. And you can see why.
He's a difference maker for him.
Was Gillespie did he not start his career at Villanova, or am I thinking of somebody else?
I think you're thinking of someone else.
Okay. My bad then.
But I think he was, I don't know if he won the league's defensive player of the year, but he was definitely on the all defensive team, first team all league guy at Belmont. And yeah, he is everything he's brought over as translated. He's a really good facilitator, doesn't turn the ball over a ton. Pest defensively. He is in your grill. He runs the offense smoothly and is a 43% 3-point shooter. He does.
Pretty good.
He doesn't need to be the guy. I don't think he's a guy who's going to go out there, give you 30 a night. He's never going to be the guy, but he is a perfect old school point guard. I really, really love his game. He's amazing. I think if we talk about Maryland, does he get enough love? And Coach said it. He is 100% right. They don't. Gillespie doesn't get enough love for how good he is. I don't think enough people are watching.
How about Purdue, Maryland, Sweet 16, Braden Smith versus Gillespie?
I like it. I like it. Let's move on. We had another top 10 matchup yesterday. Now, the news came out like shortly before that Iowa State would be without a couple of the really key pieces. They would be without Curtis Jones. They would be without Gilbert. So they were going in shorthanded. It did not look like an advantageous spot for the Cyclones, but I will give them credit. I thought yesterday on the road at Houston, game day being there, that they gave up a really good accounting for themselves being shorthanded. But Houston, at the end of the day, with the win yesterday, clinches at least a share of the Big 12 conference. They're 3 games up. They're basically the conference champions. I don't foresee Houston faltering the final couple games of the year. Houston wins 68-59, and LJ Cryer, man, 35 minutes, 28 points, 5 of 7 from the 3-point line. He chips in 5 rebounds. He was unconscious. They had a stretch in the first half where Houston it was close, nip and tuck. Houston goes on a run to go up like 14. Milos Uzan has 19. He hit like 2 or 3 threes during that stretch. He was phenomenal. Emmanuel Sharp hits a dagger 3 late after securing an offensive rebound. We talk all the time about Houston and just how good they are. But, man, when they really want to put the clamps on you, there's nothing you can do. Like, I don't think there's anything you can do unless you just shit in a bunch of threes and put them on their back foot.
And I think you said before you started the Houston train, I give Iowa State a lot of credit. Yeah. I mean, to play without those 2 kids and battle that team there like they did. But at the end of the day, to beat Houston, you just have to, you can never stop. You can never stop. And you've got to be able to get guys off the dribble to get in that paint and try and find guys. And you have to make open shots. And when Houston gets going and their guards are rolling and they're home late, lights out. It's just too much for them. It was just too much for Iowa State. I mean,
Yeah, just the firepower. I mean, Iowa State's running a walk-on out there. He played decent minutes.
Yeah.
But I thought the one thing they did really interesting and what kind of left me agreeing with Coach and being more impressed by the loser, which I think I've done for every single game we've talked about now. I've come away like, but the losing team, that's the team we really got to talk about. But the way they ran offense through Josh Jefferson, they got him on like the short roll quite a bit or just him on the perimeter. And he was taking guys off the dribble and kind of initiating the offense. I thought he played an excellent game. Granted, 4 points, 1 of 9 shooting. So he can't be like that good, but 8 assists as a big man. They ran a lot of their offense through him on either short roll or just getting him going, as I mentioned. 8 assists, 7 steals. He did have 4 turnovers, including some turnovers late in the game, which was the reason they ended up not winning. But
that stat line's insane. Read that stat line again. He was 1 for 9
in the field, 4 points, 4 rebounds, 8 assists, 7 steals, 2 blocks, 4 turnovers.
That's the craziest stat line I think I've ever heard in my entire life.
I want to ask you guys, since we've talked a lot about Duke, Auburn against the field, Houston being one of these teams, for them to get knocked out in the NCAA tournament, what's the prototype to beat them? Because I think you obviously have to shoot the 3 well. You're going to have dudes who can get a 3 off and make them to keep Houston like a lot of pressure on them. I think off that, you got to have a team that cuts well. Because if you watch Houston, I was getting so frustrated with Iowa State at times yesterday, and you watch it, Houston just demolishes and eats up pick and rolls. Iowa State kept going to like this pick and roll, and Houston would just eat it up. I think you have to scrap any pick and roll against them. You have to play off the ball with your cuts, and you got to make threes, and then hopefully you get some offensive rebounds. To me, that's the prototype you have to beat Houston. Coach, you would know better than us. Give me a team or two that could knock Houston out of the NCAA tournament with the style.
Well, Tennessee, because of Ziegler with the ball. Like, you've got to have a guard that can get past them on the ball defense to create help. Now, they're so great at rotating. They're so great at covering for each other. They're so good at, getting their hands on things. But you have to have a guard that can beat them off the dribble to the paint. And if you don't, and you just try and run perimeter offense, like you said, ball screen, perimeter sets, they'll just kill you.
Yeah, Michael, I just don't get it. And I know that's offense and you have to be who you are. You can't necessarily change. But when you watch Houston, and we talked about the connectivity of this team, we're on the flight of the ball. All 5 guys are moving. And then you watch teams try to go ball screens against them and isolate them in like a side pick and roll or up top on a more flat pick and roll. They try to slip even. Houston just annihilates it. I think you just have to spread them out, have some guys that can take them off the bounce and win the individual matchups, and then spray a bunch of threes against them.
I mean, that's kind of, Iowa State tried to do that with Jefferson, and let's see that really weird stat line. But like, I think part of why Iowa State kind of had to use like pick and rolls and stuff like that. And granted, it got eaten up, but I think it would have gotten eaten up even worse if some of these guys are trying to create is they don't have their guards. Those are the 2 of their better creators, right? Like Gilbert gets to the lane. He's one of my favorite players in the country. He gets to the lane better than just about any guard in the country. And Curtis Jones is another really good creator. You thought those 2 guys, they don't have really a ton of punch to beat you one-on-one off the bounce. So I think they kind of had to in this matchup. Frankly, you asked the question earlier. I think Iowa State at full health is a good matchup for Houston. I think they have those, when those guys are playing, they can create mismatches and get guys going. And then you can find a Momcilovic in the corner. You can find a Nate Heisey. They run Watson off the bench. He can shoot too. That if those guys are playing at full strength, I think they can match up with them too, to Coach's point.
Can I give you a matchup that would likely be an Elite 8 Final 4 matchup that I think is kind of that mold that would give Houston a lot of troubles, and that's Florida. The way they spread it out, they've got elite shot makers, Walter Clayton, Elijah Martin. And then you got your role players, not just the stars, but you got your role players. Thomas Huff has been amazing. Denzel Aberdeen has his moments, Alex Condon, and you've got your big man back. Did I not see that Micah Hanlongton came back yesterday against LSU, or he's on his way back?
Game before he came back.
Yes.
So you throw in a big 7'1" dude who can really rebound and score around the rim. I think if we saw a Florida-Houston matchup in that Elite Eight, Final Four area, to me, I favor Florida in that matchup because they've got everything that could give Houston problems.
Sign me up for that game.
Yeah, I think. Look, Florida's a bad matchup for most teams, though. Yeah. To be fair, Florida's a bad matchup for most. The last one I want to talk about before we kind of talk about some bubble teams and how they fared this. Go ahead.
Notre Dame girl just hit a three-pointer at the buzzer to send the game to overtime.
Oh, my God.
That's the buzzer. Off the dribble.
Look, North Carolina State, you're going to have to regroup for another 5-minute period, and that's hard to do.
I'm sorry. It was amazing. It was amazing.
It's crazy. The other one I want to talk about real quick happened on Friday night. Number 12 Michigan State goes to Ann Arbor and puts down their rival number 14 Michigan 75-62. They claim the top spot in the Big Ten now. We previewed this back on Thursday's episode. Tom Izzo, I may have been the only one who picked Michigan State. I know I did. I don't remember if somebody else picked them on the panel here. But I just thought, Izzo's really good in these type of environments. Michigan would have to make a bunch of threes, really get that big-to-big pick and roll going. Michigan finishes the game 5-21. Jace Richardson, again, down the stretch, finishes with 21 points, 6 rebounds, 3 steals. He is awesome. Michigan went to that zone that they run a lot of times. Michigan State was able to just eat it up. Sparty shot 40.9% from the three-point line. If you get them shooting well from 3, then it's almost impossible to beat them with how they like to pack the paint and attack the rim. Look, this was a great performance. We rave over Tom Izzo's teams all the time, and barring that a week or two ago when they went out to LA and lost to USC and UCLA, they've been phenomenal in Big Ten play, and that's a huge win on Friday night. Puts them in front in the Big Ten now.
Yeah, real quick, I flipped to the Notre Dame game. They showed the replay. First of all, that girl, hand in her face, and she nails it.
Dalgo's reaction.
Yeah. The opposing coach, he just drops his clipboard.
So to Michigan State point, Josh, put them in the bucket of like teams that are just peaking, right? The St. John's bucket, the BYU bucket, because they're just playing so well. They've just found their identity. This Richardson kid now has elevated his game. Another one of those kids, right in the freshman conversation with Queen and Cooper and all these great freshmen, the kids at Rutgers. But Michigan State has found their identity. They know who they are. They know how to win. And Izzo's Izzo. And like I said last week, I think he loves his team. And when he loves a team like this, you called it. You were all over it, Josh, on the game Friday, and credit to them for that big win.
Can I, DeRosa, you follow more social media like I do. Mm-hmm. Apparently, and I haven't confirmed this, but it got shared around, and I have no reason to believe it's fake. Jace Richardson on, I think it was Instagram or Snapchat, put up a thing after that game Friday night, and with a caption of him sitting in the locker room, it was basically like, "Man, I hate when these teams play 2-3 zone."
That was an old Rocket Watts post. That's old.
Oh, was it? Okay. I got you. So I won't say the rest of it then. I thought that may be real because it sounded like something like a young stud would say. Okay, I'll let that go then.
Yeah, that's old Rocket Watts. And look, Rocket Watts went out there. He had to transfer down a couple times, but he ended his career pretty well. Short memory for you, Josh, so I apologize. He ended at Oakland. But one thing with this Michigan State team, they mentioned it on the broadcast. I don't remember who was on call, so I apologize. I can't give them credit. But they said, like, the way this Michigan State team plays, they manage egos really well. Like, we're in the portal era, but these guys are all in for each other. And it was a really good point, and they move the ball so well. This team is really connected. You can tell. Like, they're not selfish. Like, you have Jace Richardson as the son of NBA star Jason Richardson. That guy could have an ego. He doesn't. Trey Holloman's been there for 4 years. He's finally getting his time. That guy could have an ego. He's okay coming off the bench. You have just a ton of these guys. They all can have egos, and you wouldn't blame any of them. I mean, Jeremy Fears, redshirt freshman, was the guy. His brother is over there killing it at Oklahoma. He could have an ego. He doesn't. They don't have egos. They manage that so well.
It's
I
the
think
Tom
that's a
Izzo. It's the Izzo thing, though. And that, to that point, like everybody that are kind of this new wave sees the clips of Izzo just losing his mind on players. And I would never do that. Oh, it's 2025. But he does it, and his players to a T all say they love him. He knows the buttons to push, and a lot of times, yeah, it comes out as an aggressive, kind of that Italian style of being passionate. But to your point, look how connected they are. They check their egos at the door. It's been a Michigan State staple for the last 30 years, and it's because of that style that he trusts them, obviously, but he wants to bring the best out in them. That's why they don't have egos. It's a style.
Izzo and Kelvin Sampson, right? They both know who can play for them. They only recruit the kids that can play for them. And if you can't handle the heat, you can't be with them, and they don't want you. And they're fine with that. Yep. And so that's what they do. And that's why these kids, why they've sustained over time and why they have the kids on their team, like you guys have said, and who they look for and who they recruit are only guys that they're going to be able to coach.
Yeah. Yep. 100%.
And they don't care. And they're Hall of Fame coaches. They don't give a shit. If they if you don't want to put up with it, then don't come here.
Yeah. Well, the beauty of longevity too is these kids aren't dumb. They do their research for the most part. They know that, hey, if we go play for Izzo, yeah, we're probably going to get yelled at, but we're going to be better players in the long haul and have a chance to win at the highest level. They're not dumb. So great win for Michigan State. That Izzo train continues to roll on, and we'll see, man. I think they end up probably winning the Big Ten, but there's still some big games left for them. I think them and Michigan's got to lock horns here again soon. So we will keep an eye on. We're not going to talk about all these games, but I did have bubble teams listed. I will read off the results. You tell me who the biggest winner or two from the bubble teams were over this weekend. We can discuss that real quick. Villanova 81, number 15, Marquette 65. Arkansas 92, number 18, Missouri 85. Oklahoma 93, number 21, Mississippi State 87. SMU got beat by number 20, Clemson at home. Cincinnati beats TCU in a bubble-licious game, 75-63. NC State, I think, destroys Wake Forest's resume and chance to get into the tournament, 85-73. Same Colorado did to Baylor. Colorado got their second conference win at home, beating Baylor 76-74. I think Baylor's in a little better spot than Wake Forest, but that hurts. South Carolina gets their first SEC win of the year, beating Texas 84-69. I think the Longhorns really hurt themselves last night. And then UNC beat up Virginia 81-66. All of a sudden, the Tar Heels with this weak-ass bubble, maybe on the right side, or if not, they're kind of right towards where they need to be in the NCAA tournament team. So all those games I just listed, who did themselves the biggest favors this weekend and who really hurt themselves?
But there's a lot to unpack there, but I'll start with the North Carolina thing because I brought this up a couple weeks ago, that their schedule softened up so much that they could win 6 of their last 7. Now, they have an interesting one coming up I'll talk about a little bit later, but that they could end up with enough wins or just don't get in. I maybe, but we can talk about, like I said, I got something I want to talk about a little later on that. Arkansas, interesting, giving themselves a chance, right? And at their best, they're pretty good. They found their rhythm some without Boogie being around now. John L. Davis is actually, finally playing like they thought he was going to play. Oklahoma, they had no pulse. They might have a little something beating out. They're losing 5 in a row and getting that win. Boy, there was just a lot going on. And Baylor goes to me. Baylor, for me, they go in the I don't trust bucket. Put them in with Illinois. Put them in with a couple other teams we talked about. I just don't know how good they are.
Michael, Arkansas. Watched that entire game. Came on right after Kentucky got beat by Alabama. Look, Arkansas lost Boogie Flan. At the time, they were 0-5, 0-6 in the SEC, and we all thought, well, this will continue to be to their credit and Coach Cal's credit. They're a better team without Boogie Flan. They're just a better team, and the results have proven it. They avoid the series sweep to the number 18 Missouri. They found themselves down big early, rallied back behind great defense, and they made plays down the stretch. And then I asked our friend Hunter from NKY Bracketology last night, I said, does this win put them in? That win last night in his bracket puts Arkansas in the NCAA tournament. Wow. Now they'll be in Dayton in the first 4, But as of this moment, they're in the NCAA tournament, and they've got a chance to further elevate that coming up. They've got Texas. They've still got Vandy. I think they got South Carolina. Very winnable games for Arkansas to solidify their NCAA tournament hopes now.
Boy, is that Arkansas-Texas game interesting. Is that Wednesday night?
That is Wednesday night. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit.
Woo.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, I agree with your Arkansas point, and I just think part of why they're succeeding at this point is because guys aren't worried about getting pulled. I don't think it's a Flan thing. Like, he was awesome. It's just you're able to play more freely. John Davis is playing so much more free now. He's just like, look, if I'm having a bad game, I'm having a bad game. I'm just going to go out there and play my game, and it's working out. Guys like that, TJ Wagner doing the same thing. That's what it feels like to me from the outside looking in. Of course, I couldn't tell you if that's exactly the reason. The biggest winner to me, that said, is Oklahoma. Coach mentioned it. They lost 5 in a row, and then they finally get this win to get them kind of going on the right track. They were a team that if they lost this game, I was ready to mark them for dead. Found a way to get a win here. I mean, coming off of a 20-point drubbing they got to Florida, losing to LSU at home, losing to Missouri by 24, Tennessee 18, Auburn 28. These games, aside from the LSU game, were not competitive whatsoever. And they found a way to win this game. This was one they desperately needed. They get it. And next game coming to town, they're hosting an injured Kentucky team. That's another game they have to win. But they got some momentum going into that game that if they can win that game, a game that, frankly, are we talking about that one later?
We are not. But go ahead and say if you think Oklahoma is going to win. Yeah. Now, I will say, I think Lamont's back, though. I think he's back for the game.
That absolutely changes things because of, I mean, if you can put him on Jeremiah Fears, that completely changes how I look at that game. So that's definitely a game, like, wait to see his status. But
a win, to your point, though, a win for Oklahoma would really solidify their bubble resume.
So yeah, that they would be my big winner, and my big loser is Wake the Nation. That's it, dead. See ya. Bye.
Wake losing. No offense, Trevor, and he would be the first to admit. Carolina State is awful. They are bad this year, and Wake again, like the last couple years. Remember they beat Duke last year, and then followed up losing out basically and missed NCAA tournament. They beat Duke this year, and they've been not great since then. That loss, I think, puts a nail in their coffin unless they go on a run and win a couple in the ACC tournament. I want to talk Cincinnati just real quick. Now, you look at them, 16-11. Their brand of basketball is ugly on the offensive end. They're really good defensively. They lost here recently to Iowa State and West Virginia prior to the TCU win. But if you look at bracketologists, they're still hovering around because the bubble's so weak right now. 52nd in KenPom. They are 6-10 in the league. They've got 4 games left. They get 3 of those. They're going to lose the Houston game on the road, more than likely. They get Baylor, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State to round out finishing 19-12 and at least win one game in the Big 12 tournament. I think Cincinnati's in the NCAA tournament. I just do. I don't know how you keep them out of a power conference when you stack them up against some of these other teams. But I think the biggest winners of the bubble this weekend, Arkansas, Cincinnati, Oklahoma. I think for sure the biggest losers, Wake. Oh, and then North Carolina. The biggest losers, Wake, Baylor, Texas, and SMU, who does not have a quad 1 victory and had their last opportunity last night and got beat by a good Clemson team. I think they've really hurt themselves. Villanova I threw in here because you just never know. I think it's more on Marquette, but Villanova, you never know what happens here. They've been all of a sudden knocking off teams, and who knows? Maybe they sneak in. But what I want
Cincinnati makes the tournament over a George Mason, a UCSD, a Drake, I'm going to lose my mind. Those teams are not. Those teams are on a different level than Cincinnati. Cincinnati's not.
They are, but you know how it is. It's going to be Metro.
Yeah, I do. And it's going to piss me off. And I know it's going to happen, and it's going to get me. Cincinnati, and look, it's a bad basketball team. They're bad.
Look, and you got people out here openly campaigning for adding more teams to a shitty bubble. We're hard enough getting 68 in. Now you want to add another 4 to 8 teams who don't deserve it.
72. Indiana's a tournament team. Indiana might be a tournament team. They're in that conversation.
If they beat Purdue today, they're right back in the mix.
Yeah,
they're playing right now. If they beat Purdue today, they're right back in the mix. By the way, shout out to Mike Woodson. He is sitting. They brought out the seat from '85 where Bob Knight famously threw that chair across the court. They brought that chair out, and Woodson sitting in it today for that game against Purdue. So that's a cool little touch right there. What I want to do now before we move on, let's give some love to our sponsors over at Dubby. W is a clean energy drink that is made to give you focus with no crash jitters or angst like other energy drinks. They have no maltodextrin fillers and don't use artificial dyes. W contains vitamins, amino acids, a nootropic, and 150 milligrams caffeine. The product is made in the USA at an FDA-inspected facility that strictly adheres to GMP manufacturing guidelines. If you go visit www.w.gg, find whatever you like. You can get the Galaxy Grenade. They've got like cherry limeade. They've got a lot of really cool flavors. Easy to use. You can get the tub and use a scoop, or you can get the little trial packets, put it in a bottle of water, shake it up. I promise you firsthand, it's really good stuff. Go find something that you like. At checkout, use promo code ECB10. You're going to get 10% off of your order. You'll help out our friends and sponsors of W, and of course, you'll be helping us here at ECB. Go give W a try now. Use the promo code ECB10 at checkout to save yourself some money. Looking ahead to this upcoming week, gentlemen, as we wind down the weeks of the regular season here, the games become more amplified than they already have been, especially for teams who have, whether it be conference seeding on the race or this bubble we've been talking about. And I've got a mix of games this week because I don't think Monday through Wednesday are the best collection of games, but the games we're going to talk about are games who I feel like are interesting for one reason or another. Let's begin on Big Monday. Tomorrow night, number 5 Houston plays number 11 Texas Tech. I have it at Texas Tech. Did I read that wrong? Is it at Tech?
Texas
yeah,
Tech.
It is. Okay, so Houston's on the road. Now, if you remember, Houston's last loss was to Texas Tech, their only conference loss at home back on February 1st in overtime. Tech went into the Cintas Center and beat Houston 82-81 in overtime. They get the return leg tomorrow night in Texas Tech in Lubbock, where Houston on KenPom is favored to win by a point in the return 68-67. Coach, we know how good both teams are. JT Toppin for Texas Tech in conference play has been out of his mind. I think he gave them 22 last night in a win. Can Tech pull the unique sweep of a team we all feel is Final Four national championship good, or does Houston kind of right that wrong?
Boy, oh boy, what a game. The drama of Toppin's crazy ejection, Grant's ejection, them winning without him in Houston. You know, like, man, like to beat him twice, it's so hard. Can they do it? Yes. And you said KenPom is at 1 point difference for Houston.
Yeah, again, yeah.
I just never go against Houston. So I'm going to reluctantly take Houston, but I can't wait to watch that game.
Yeah, everything Coach said, I agree with. In the matchup angle we said earlier, it's like, do they have guards that can beat you off the dribble against Houston? It's like, Elijah Hawkins can. He can. I mean, he showed he can. And I love Christian Anderson, the freshman. They sometimes run off the bench, sometimes start him at Texas Tech. He is amazing.
And who was the kid, McMillan, that played so well last time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're not even talking about Darian Williams, who's 5th in the KenPom Big 12 Conference Player of the Year, right?
Great player.
Yeah. Texas Tech is awesome. That team is like once they've got that like big win that they needed, we can talk about how awesome they are because that team is just awesome. Yeah, I don't know the last time a team has swept Houston. I'm going to look at that now, but it just kind of feels like that never happened. So just blindly, I'm going to say you're not going to sweep Houston, and I'll take – actually, I say that, yet Iowa State did it last year. So, no, they didn't. Never mind. Houston got them. Yeah, I'm going to blindly take Houston, but zero confidence. And this is a game I'm going to sit back and enjoy big time as a fan.
Look, Texas Tech needs this win, not for like missing the NCAA tournament or nothing like that. They can lose this game and their seed not be impacted at all because who they're playing. But for the Big 12 conference tournament, I keep referencing these conference tournaments and how important seeding is. 12-4. Arizona's 12-4, Iowa State's 11-5, and all of a sudden BYU's red hot 10-6, trying to knock on that door of a double bye. Tech loses, they could all of a sudden slip down to 4th. That's a huge difference. That means that they would play Houston in the semifinals of the Big 12 tournament instead of playing them on Championship Saturday. So there's a lot to go into this. They need the win. They're at home. I'm expecting that environment to be absolutely nuts. And we talked about the prototype who could beat Houston. Tech's done it once. They scored, 82 on them. I know it went to overtime, but 82. They're second in offense in the conference behind Houston,
Yep.
not that far off. They shoot the three ball 37%, and they've got dudes. Give me the Red Raiders of the season sweep over Houston.
I love it.
Environment in a close game. I think they need it more than Houston, and I think they'll deliver in front of a home crowd that'll be raucous, to say the least. Let's go to what I've titled a bubblicious matchup on Tuesday night in the Queen City of Cincinnati. Baylor at Cincinnati. Both these teams have really been blah this year. Both teams, though, are fighting for NCAA tournament lives. Baylor's 8-8 in the conference. Cincinnati's 6-10. So it's not like the Bearcats can really help seeding too much in the Big 12 tournament right now. But for their NCAA tournament lives, they need this one badly. They're at home. Michael, I'll come to you first. We know how good Cincinnati is defensively. We know how awful they are on the offensive end. Baylor, 13th in offense, 66 in defense. So the average is a little better than what Cincinnati is. But they've really struggled this year. They've lost 2 in a row, and that Colorado loss yesterday was disgusting. I think Cincinnati's defense is going to give them a lot of problems.
Yeah, this is a spite pick. Just because you mentioned Cincinnati making the tournament, I don't want them to make the tournament. This is a complete spite pick. I'm taking Baylor. I'm taking Baylor by 10 points. I'm no other analysis.
And it's at Cincinnati?
It is at Cincinnati, yep.
I just don't trust Baylor enough on the road, no matter who they're playing. So I'm going to take Cincinnati and Skyline Chili.
So to that point, Coach, in conference play, Baylor's got 2 road wins. That's it. At Arizona State in an overtime win on January 11th. At Utah, January 25th. They have lost on the road to Iowa State, Arizona, BYU, Texas Tech, Houston, and most recently yesterday at Colorado. I don't feel like that changes at all. Give me the Bearcats behind a great defensive performance, and I think they will suffocate Baylor. Baylor. Give me Cincinnati and a comfortable 7-point victory at home to, whether you like it or not, keep themselves in bubblicious talks. Let's go to Wednesday, a big-time clash inside the Big Ten. Number 12 on the road, or number 12 Michigan State on the road at College Park at number 17. Maryland, who we said we probably doesn't get the love that they deserve. Coach, Michigan State leading the conference by a half game over the rival Michigan. Maryland hanging around in that top 4 right now. Big time implications in the Big Ten because Maryland still has an outside chance of at least securing a share of the Big Ten conference right now and getting in that top 4. They're only 2 games behind Michigan State. This would go a long way of really pulling them in that top 4 race at the end of the year. Who do you got?
And you said it's where?
It's in Maryland.
Man, I look, all this talk about Maryland, we haven't given them enough love. Here's their opportunity. Scott Van Pelt, go Terps, Maryland.
Yeah, give me the Terps. Terps are going to defend the interior well. I think Julian Reese affects more shots than he gets credit for. And I think Jacoby Gillespie is going to be a pass. Yeah, give me Maryland.
Look how close these 2 teams are in conference play. Michigan State's 3rd in offense, Maryland's 4th. Defensively, you got the best 2 teams in the conference. Michigan State's 1, Maryland's number 2. Michigan State, we talked about heading into the Michigan game, how well they defended 3. They held Michigan to like 5 of 29 or whatever it was. Michigan State teams in conference are only shooting 27.8%. Maryland teams are only shooting 31.6%, so 3-point line. Michigan State's leading the league by a large margin in block percentages. This should be a very nip and tuck type of game. But being at home, I think Maryland behind Derek Queen, behind Gillespie, behind Julian Reese finds a way. I'll go and be bold to say I think this goes to overtime, how close it is.
Ooh.
I think Maryland wins a game 84-83, and you'll see Julian Reese with a breakout game in this one going for 25. I'm that confident. I give me the Terrapins.
Read those stats. It's amazing how close these 2 teams
Very
are.
similar, right? Right, nip and tuck, 3rd and 4th in offense, 1 and 2 defense. They're almost a mirror image of one another. So it should be a lot of fun.
Some good games.
On Wednesday night as well, back to the SEC, number 22 Ole Miss on the road at number 1 Auburn. Look, I know the thing will be like, it's Auburn, they're at home, steamroll. But they've been playing with their food. Now, they've been winning, right? The Florida loss being the only one since they lost to Duke back December 4th. But they struggled with Vanderbilt, pulled away late. They obviously Alabama, they dominated, controlled that game. Struggled with Arkansas, took a late run to get ahead. They struggled with Georgia at times yesterday before pulling away. I expect them to struggle with Ole Miss because Ole Miss's brand of basketball, defensive minded, get after you. Ole Miss has got guards who can go make plays. Malik Dia has been a matchup nightmare for just about everybody in the league this year. Dre Davis has been really good. Sean Padula running the point as a three-point shooter, but also kind of controlling the tempo for the team. I think Auburn wins, guys, but I'm not going to be shocked if it's not kind of Auburn playing with their food a little too much and you look up with a minute to go and it's a 2-point ball game.
Yeah, I think this can go be. I'll say I won't know if under a minute. I'll go take it under 4 minutes though, and I'll say it's a game too. I think Mississippi can play with them long enough that if Auburn doesn't shoot great or there's foul trouble or whatever with Broome, then Mississippi could take this down to the wire. I'm going to be hard pressed to pick against Auburn at home, obviously. So I'm going to pick Auburn to win, but I'm going to lean more towards Josh making this a game.
Yeah, I fully expected when this game was on the rundown to come out and say, yeah, I think Auburn's going to kill them, especially at home. And then just looking at the first game, it was a 10-point game. Auburn went to Mississippi. They won by 10.
And it was close. It was close.
Exactly. And looking at how they did it, Auburn had to shoot 14 of 28 from three. They took just about half their shots from three. That's not really how Auburn plays. That's not like to their strength. Mississippi pushed them out to the perimeter. Auburn did kill them on the offensive glass, which I think if Auburn wins this game by the TKO, I think they're going to kill them on the offensive glass. I think that's going to be the thing. Yeah, I'm actually with you guys. I think this game's going to be a competitive Auburn win. I just think the way Mississippi plays is going to present a little bit of problems. Auburn had 12 turnovers in this game, and they forced them to take a lot of deep shots in a really competitive game. Yeah, I think Mississippi Miss is going to hold in. I don't think it's going to be as close as both you guys say. I think it'd be like a 2-possession game come the under 4, and then Auburn wins a comfortable 7 to 10 points. But yeah, I think it could be competitive. I see it.
Fair enough. Look at Ole Miss's remaining 4 games. At Auburn, home against Oklahoma, home against Tennessee, at Florida. This league every single night. We talked about Alabama's schedule, man. There's no gimmies. None.
No.
Final one, saying in the SEC, another bubblicious alert. Wednesday night, Texas goes on the road looking to avoid a series sweep at Arkansas. I remember a couple weeks ago, the Razorbacks went to Texas and got a win down in Austin. Arkansas, who we just confirmed with our friend Hunter over NKY Bracketology, is currently projected in the field of 68 following the win against Missouri last night. A loss here probably knocks them back out, so they need the win. The Razorbacks have been playing better. We know how we feel about Texas, who on the surface does not look like an NCAA tournament team, but the resume and analytics have them right there on the bubble. This is a bubblicious game, Michael. Do the Razorbacks get the series sweep over rival Texas?
Yes, Arkansas. I don't like the way Texas is playing lately. I don't trust them. Give me Arkansas.
So, speaking of freshmen, the kid Trey Johnson still went off the other night, even though they lost.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to watch Georgia much. Asa Newell, is that his name? Asa Newell. Holy cow.
He's good, man.
There are some unbelievable freshmen. Okay, that aside, man, is this an important game? I'll just say for a lot of reasons. I think Arkansas, look, if we're picking and this way we've talked through this, who's playing better now and they're home, I'm going to take Arkansas. Tight game, good game. I'll take Arkansas.
Yeah, I mean, I think this will be tight because no matter how you stack it up, Arkansas's defense has been really good here lately. Trey Johnson still has the ability. He gave them 25 in Austin, their first matchup, and Arkansas was able to pull out an 8-point victory. Arthur Kaluma's back. If you remember, he missed that Kentucky game. He ended up fouling out last night, I think, against South Carolina. But Texas to win this game not only needs Trey Johnson to be Trey Johnson, but they need production out of everybody. Caden Shedrick has to block shots and hold his own against Big Z. They need Tremont Mark to do what he did against Kentucky and find his offensive rhythm. They need Jordan Pope not to take silly shots. And they need Kaluma to be that two-way defender, a slasher to the rim. They have a path to victory in this game, but Arkansas at home has just been different. Adu Thero has not even been playing good here lately. They've got great production from Carter Knox and Billy Richmond. Jonas Adu's starting to play better. And then you throw in Big Z and DJ Wagner along with John L. Davis. Arkansas has got momentum. I think they win and keep themselves in the NCAA tournament. I think this will be a close one, but they'll keep themselves in the NCAA tournament. Let's go to bank on it. And I mentioned it on the first Bubblicious game on Tuesday. DeRosa, I guess cover your ears. Cincinnati destroys Baylor Tuesday night and drops the Baylor Bears out of the NCAA tournament discussion for now, drops them on the wrong side of the bubble. I'm confident in this. Cincinnati is going to put a beating on Baylor on Tuesday night. Bank on it.
My bank on it is I think Florida State is going to do damage to Carolina's hopes.
Ooh, I
think Leonard Hamilton has a couple home games left as the coach there. I think they beat North Carolina and make things real tough on the Tar Heels. Bank on it. Seminoles.
Josh, you've been doing ECB for a while. Has there ever been a bank on it where someone has gone against the other person? Because it wasn't going to be my bank on it, but now I'm thinking about it.
Look, I think so.
Maybe bank on it.
Hey, look, me and Peyton, I think, have done it before. Maybe you and Peyton. But go ahead. Let's do it.
Huh. So that wasn't going to be the one I was going to do. Yeah, you know what? Screw it. Let's do it. Baylor's coming to Cincinnati. Baylor's going to beat them by 15 plus. Screw it. Let's do it. Let's do it.
I love the Bearcat angst that he has right now. I love that so much. And I've got my Cincinnati gear on. It's not because I'm a Bearcat fan. It's because obviously the Reds. Shout out Ellie Dela Cruz in spring training first game yesterday. 2 plate appearances, home run for both sides of the plate. Reds are winning the World Series this year. Speaking of shout outs, let's round out the show today. I'll make mine short and sweet. Jeremiah Fears, mentioned him earlier in Oklahoma's big win over number 21 Mississippi State. 27 points, 10 assists. He starts playing well. No surprise Oklahoma gets a win again. He needs to carry Oklahoma into the NCAA tournament. I just hope he doesn't do it on Wednesday night. Women's college basketball. Today is a great day for the women's game. Double overtime and a top 15 showdown right now between Notre Dame and North Carolina State. Then you've got Louisville playing. They've got a big one. Who is it? They've got
North Carolina.
North Carolina, number 9 coming in. And then right after that, 4 p.m., LSU comes to Lexington for a top 15 showdown. Great day for the women's college basketball scene. I'm so happy for that. We need more of that. So really happy for that. Shout out to the women's game. And then South Carolina men's gets their first SEC win of the season. They've been close. They played Auburn close. They played Alabama close. They've been knocking on the doorstep. They finally knock it down yesterday against the Longhorns. Congratulations, South Carolina. They're off the schneid. They get their one and maybe only win of the league this year, but they got it done. Congratulations to Lamont Paris and company. Shout out to South Carolina.
So I'm going to shout out a live shout out to the NC State women who are about to pull off the upset over number 1 Notre Dame. They're up 8 with 1:14. Maybe I'm a little premature, but I think they're going to do it. And if they do, it'll be the first time they beat a number 1 team since 1978, according to that stat. Okay, that's a quick one. My other 2 are a little off the radar. Hampton University. First-year coach Ivan Thomas from Georgetown. They've won 5 of their last 6 and are playing terrific basketball here in late February. The other one, I'm shouting out a good friend of mine, Russell White, the head coach of the Cal Lutheran Kingsmen out in Southern California. Division III school. They went 21-4 and just won their back-to-back regular season championships in the SCIAC conference. Shout out Kingsman and my buddy Russell White. Keep it going.
That's awesome. I'm going to go a little off the grid in shout outs. One, Norfolk State is really, really good this year. Shout out Coach Rob Jones. He's built a program there. They're the best team in the MEAC. They're going to be a tournament team in my mind. They should be a huge favorite to win that league. I wanted to shout out a couple games I watched that were a ton of fun. One, Bradley ran this. I sent it in the group chat we have. Bradley ran this really interesting play, this fake dribble handoff to the bucket to win a game. The play that happened seconds before was Duke Dean. He got like a trick drag ball screen, getting the ball at the floor with like 7-8 seconds left. Coach calls a timeout as he's in the middle of his shot motion. I think you guys know what happens next. He drills it, but the timeout was called first. Then they run that play. Then they run the little drag play. Beautiful. They get that bucket. So they still end up winning. But yeah, that was crazy.
So we used to have a good hand signal for that play with the we called it a keeper.
Yep.
we almost like a football. We
Yeah,
would call it a keeper. If we just give a visual. Max, we'd set teams up with the handoff, and then run a keeper and try and get the spin layup. It's tough to guard.
Very, and they ran it.
You're switching. It's really hard. I mean, it's hard.
Yeah. Boise State versus Nevada was an awesome game. Came down late. Andrew Meadow made some plays. Shaved his hair so he doesn't look like the same guy that I remember in the past, but he had 24 points. Kobe Sanders on the other side had 30. Shout out there. Utah State played an awesome game against San Diego State. San Diego State plays New Mexico Tuesday or Wednesday, one of those 2 days. That game's going to be really good. Shout out to them. And yeah, I'm just going to go with what would have been my bank on it here. I'm going to throw it as a shout out instead. Shout out to Nebraska, because I think you're going to end Dusty May's streak of winning every single game decided by 3 or less points. I think you're going to beat Dusty May at home by 3 points.
Wow.
I love the confidence there. We appreciate you guys all. Of course, I'm babysitting. You probably hear him in the back now. That's life. Well, we appreciate everybody who tunes in on these Sunday and Thursday shows. It means a lot. We've had a great season with all of you tuning in, and we really appreciate it. As we come down to the home stretch, we hope that you continue to support us, and it continues to grow. Every year, our NCAA tournament show on that Monday is the biggest thing that we do every year by a large margin. We're hoping to have some surprises for that like normal. But as we wind down the season, man, each game counts more for a lot of these teams that we've talked about, whether you're on the bubble or you're fighting for seeding or conference tournament seeding. Each game means more, which means they're a lot of fun to watch because the intensity is up maybe more than it would be in a November, December game. Tune into college basketball. Tune into the women's game today. We've got great games all throughout. But wrapping it up for here on us, Everything College Basketball for episode 219. We appreciate you guys. And until Thursday for episode 220, we will catch you guys down the road. Peace.